Oi, you know what time it is? You're tuned in listening to Dry That Aussie Metal Guy. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his content when it drops. And remember, stay brutal, you mad dogs. Roof.
Okay, then. G'day. Hey, how you all going? It's Jai, that Aussie Metal Guy here with Crank.com and with Cranium Radio. So tonight, wherever you are in the world, it's a great pleasure that I'm getting to have a chat with Shaq from Universes, or Uni Viz, as the spelling is there, to talk about the latest single, A Chosen Death, and the forthcoming tour as well. Cheers for joining me, mate.
No, thanks for having me, mate.
No, absolute pleasure, man, to get to talk about this single. I even was a consummate professional. I got some questions together for this. I usually just shoot the shit. Can you tell me first, man, tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind this track?
So yeah, absolutely. So we were kind of spending some time writing, and there was a couple of ideas essentially thrown around. And Scott especially kind of was basing the lyrics around, I guess, the general concept of, I guess, where we found ourselves sort of like post-pandemic. There's a lot of polarizing views kind of just being pushed, in media, government, those kinds of things. And, essentially that's, I guess, where we've landed is, that's pushing people further and further apart. And I think a lot of people are feeling like, maybe they can't speak up about what their individual views are for fear of being ridiculed, those kinds of things, or being called out, So there's a number of things that really kind of led to it, but that was the basic influence for the track.
So tell us a little bit about the writing and the creation process at all for this track. Did it differ at all from any of the previous releases, or tell us a little bit about that side of it?
So I guess the way that we generally try to write is, we kind of come up with like the instrumentals first. So that was largely the same. But with that being said as well, the track itself is quite different to some of the other stuff we had kind of written previously. In that, I guess what we had actually kind of done was we had written a bunch of instrumentals for other songs, like 4 or 5 songs. We did a writing trip away. And then we were actually trying to work on some lyrics and vocal placement for some of those. And we were finding that these lyrics that Scott had written kind of weren't really fitting to the other instrumentals that we had written that way. So we actually started this one off with the hook and then wrote the chorus and then kind of evolved the rest of the song around that. So this one was actually written a little bit differently to how we would generally approach a songwriting process, and it kind of came out with something that was maybe a little bit almost rockier than some of the, I guess, the other more darker, like electronic influence tracks that, we've kind of really written. But yeah, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah. So what kind of message are you hoping the listeners take away from this track?
Well, I guess the general consensus is that, people will get what they get from it. But I guess the general message is that, sort of, people should feel comfortable to, sort of speak their individual truths. So, I guess it works for and against. We're supposed to have the ability for free speech, everything like that. But I think with so many polarizing views out there, there is the fear of being ridiculed for having your own opinion, or being kind of buried under the weight of everyone else's opinions. So, I guess the message would be that, sort of don't let, I guess, sort of external opinions fuel yours, and feel free to speak your own truth and stand up for what you believe in, I guess, really.
Yep. And one thing with Universes, you have this really great, as a pigeonhole, metalcore sound, but you have these real melodic, especially with this track as well, but with a lot of your music, you have these really great melodies and this melodic part that switches in with the aggressive side as well. How do you balance those elements when making these tracks?
Well, I think so both Michael, or Red, as we know him, and Scott, they've played in bands for a number of years. And so they've kind of got this a bit of synergy, I think, with the way that their vocals sort of work. And in terms of contrast, they contrast really well, but they also blend together really well as well. So I guess what we look for when we are writing is that kind of contrast. It might be blending clean guitars over heavy sections, or utilizing synth that we might apply to, softer sections, and actually carrying those into breakdowns as well. And then also, in some of our choruses, when we might double them up, we might layer Scott's vocals over the top of Red's, or we might have the two vocalists essentially singing and screaming different like lyrics at the same time. And that kind of really, I think, helps create a contrast between the two, but at the same time allowing them to really kind of blend together and find their own places in the mix. So it's something that does actually come pretty naturally to us, because I mean, some of the boys listen to, some like I find myself listening to like underground hip hop, a lot of heavier stuff like Paleface, King 810, Body Snatcher, that kind of stuff is a lot of my jam. And some of the other boys prefer, definitely more along the lines of, some, I guess, on the softer side of like metalcore and whatnot. And a lot of that kind of stuff blends together because of the fact that, you've got influence from really heavier sides of the, I guess the heavy scene, but then on the flip side, the more melodic sides as well. So we kind of just bring into the table what we think sounds cool. And, we don't really limit ourselves when it comes to trying to work out what the next section of the track is going to be.
Yeah, that's it. Did you catch Paleface and King 810 and your boys Gravemind on tour recently with In Hearts?
I did, mate. Paleface was probably one of the best live shows I've ever seen.
Weren't they? Oh, they were so bloody good. I'd heard some of their stuff, of course. You can't go anywhere without hearing them in the heavy metal community. They're unreal. But to go and see them live and see how well they work that stage, and Gravemind put on a great show, and then like King 810 followed on from them, then Paleface and In Heart's Wake to finish it. I just went and seen it in Adelaide, and it was a killer show, dude.
100%. I was going to say, like, I'd been listening to King for a while, and then, funnily enough, just from like listening to music in the gym and just Spotify doing its thing, ended up coming across Paleface like, I don't know, maybe 10 months ago, something like that, and in a very quick succession, they just ended up becoming one of my favorite bands. And yeah, they were. So it was incredible to see them, and they absolutely. I would say they kind of stole the show a little bit.
I know In Heart's Wake are unreal, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but that was just the phenomenal performance that Paleface put on. For me, it would be hard for any band to follow on from that, but I think In Hearts knew that as well. So.
Well, it is pretty hard as well. It's another thing, if you're like a metalcore band that's kind of following up from like, I guess, bands that are sort of towing the line with, more of the heavier sides of the genre. Yeah. It is always hard to follow. Like we've had that before, when we've been on tour, like when we were on tour with Volumes and Gravemind, we played with some acts that were pretty heavy, and it's always a bit of a change up when you've got like I don't know if you've heard of the guys Incomplexant.
Yes, I've just seen them as well.
Yeah, mate, they opened the show for the Volumes tour. Or they might have been second on the bill. I can't remember how many people were on the lineup, but they were a pretty hard act to follow because you kind of got like a blackened deathcore act. And then you've got us being, kind of a more melodic metalcore. It's a bit of a change up, going from one to the other. But it keeps it fresh, I guess.
Yeah, I like shows like that. And how good's the Aussie scene? I've seen Complexant recently, but speaking of like that, Lycanthrope, I fucking love that band as well. And they played the Southern Death Fest here, and they kind of have that same metalcore vibes going on with Griegsy and that, and I'm a huge fan of them, and that was mainly death metal bands, and they were in there, and that was really cool to see them hold it down in amongst all them guys there.
Absolutely too. They put on a good show. Their bass player is a bit of a freak. He we played with him in a freak in a good way. I mean,
yeah, I know, dude.
He's a weapon.
I know, man. They're all a bunch of really cool. Everyone in the Aussie scene's cool.
Yeah, and we ended up playing with them on the Volumes tour as well in Newcastle. Was it Newcastle? Yeah, I think it was UNI. And they were a bunch of great guys, and yeah, they're like I said, I was sitting there the whole time pretty much. We played, I think we were maybe just on the lineup just after them, and mate, I was looking at their bass player and I was like, I got to get up there after that guy. He was absolutely shredding. But no, they were a bunch of great guys, and yeah, cool band.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you guys have a tour coming up as well to support the Chosen Death, don't you? Well, let me find a little
Yeah.
tour picture there to share for everyone as we cut us to the corner. There we go. Yeah, man. Tell us a little bit about what fans can expect on this run of shows, man.
So we'll have there'll be a bit of a mix of music on this one. So they'll be calling back to some of our older stuff. Just some of the, I guess, the fan favorites of some of the earlier EPs. We'll also have something more. So that was our most recent EP that came out around November last year.
2023. Yep.
Yeah, we'll have that one being played in full. So that's actually, interestingly enough, that EP's only been played in full once before in Brisbane. So this will be the first time that anyone else in Australia is actually getting to hear it live, which will be pretty cool.
Fuck yeah.
But on top of that, we'll be bringing the Chosen Death with us. So that'll be the first time really anyone in Australia is hearing it live. So it'd be cool to actually be able to not only take the new single around Australia, but also, also the first time that something more will be played in full around the country as well. So that'd be pretty cool. But on top of that, we've just been looking to kind of really try and refine our live sound. So hopefully that shows. I'm sure, we'll be putting our best foot forward at all of the shows. So, and, everyone's always been very welcoming to us. So I'm sure there'll be something to look forward to.
Oh, yeah, definitely, dude. Speaking of live performances, do you have like a favorite live performance or a most memorable moment so far, dude?
Well, it's hard to say, mate, because to be honest, I just love playing.
Yeah.
I
Every
mean,
moment's a memorable moment, isn't it? Kind of to share the
yeah.
music, eh?
And look, I'm the only non-original member of the band. There was sort of Nik, Red, and Scott have been around since day dot, but the boys did have a previous bass player, so I've been in pretty well since the release of just before the release of our single Saboteur.
Yes.
So that was, the boys had already put out 2 EPs and a couple of singles before I came along. But
That was 2022 or roundabouts, yeah? Something like that?
yeah, maybe even 2021. It was
21,
kind
yep.
of something, because I think so before we released that single, we did join the guys on sort of just a very brief headline tour. It was a run of shows, really. It was kind of like Brizzy, Newcastle, Sydney, or Sydney Wollongong, I think.
Because I think that
And
come up when I was chatting to Michael and that, like you'd joined recently when I chat. Yeah, I kind of remembered that time as well because I had been, like I said, I'd interviewed Scott back in 2020, and so and this is the third interview with you guys. So no, it's good. It was just keen to know, man, what for you so far.
Like I was gonna say, there's been some pretty interesting times. I've met some really cool people since being on the tour. I guess the whole Volumes run of shows was just pretty mind blowing for me because like I've been a massive fan of Volumes since I was probably 16. So like I guess that whole thing was like kind of like looking back. It's like imagine you could go back and tell 16-year-old you that in however many years you'd be 13 years or whatever you'll be touring with Volumes. You just 16-year-old you kind of just wouldn't believe that. You know what I mean? So and yeah, like there was times during that at the Adelaide shows, funnily enough, we were sitting around just like the green room there, the green rooms at the venue we were playing at. I can't even remember what the venue was called actually, but it was awesome venue. And the green rooms were massive, and we were just hanging out with the boys in Volumes, just playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And just the riders were massive at that venue, so we were just slamming beers and playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 in their green room, and it was a proper hangout. And safe to say there was a lot of hangovers on that tour, but it was a ton of fun. And definitely one for the memory books.
Okay, and besides the Chosen Death, if you had to pick 2 tracks you had to play for someone who hadn't heard you guys before, what would they be?
I usually go to, well, I mean, they're pretty much anything off the Something More EP. That's a release I'm pretty happy with.
Yep.
And I think we all feel the same. I'd say So Loveless is probably, I don't even think So Loveless is my favorite song on that EP, but I think it is it is the song I think that kind of captures the EP almost the best. It's kind of got the best blend of like, I guess, our sort of styles. If I was to kind of give someone an idea of what our older sort of stuff sounded like, I'd probably go Hell Over Me, or that's a pretty popular one. But I'd probably say my favorite track off that latest EP is I Think I'm Better on My Own, which has actually been picking up quite a bit more traction recently.
Yeah, that's fucking probably one of mine at the moment. After a recent breakup, dude, I fucking killer track.
Oh, mate, and sorry to hear, mate. Breakups are never easy, but it's there's a lot of melody on that, and we approached the kind of the chorus section in that a little bit differently, which was cool. And
I
yeah,
just beat
one.
cancer, so a breakup, I'll fucking smash that. No worries, bro. So cheers,
mate. I was just gonna say, there's no stopping you, mate.
Yeah, that's it. Nah, awesome, mate. Thank you so very much. Do you have any last words, shout outs, thank yous, anything else you'd like to chuck in there, my friend?
Well, really just shout outs and thank yous to pretty much anyone that's, come along to a show, or anyone that is yet to come along to our shows that we might see on this latest run of this latest tour. Pretty much anyone that's bought merch, anyone that's just come up to us after a show and sort of let us know what they thought. And you to yourself, mate, for having me along and sticking in there and chatting to us over the last bloody 4 or 5 years or however long it's been.
Always a pleasure to chat to you guys, mate. Everybody grab some universes, or when you're typing it in, UNI/VS, chucking in the stereos, crank it up really bloody loud. The neighbours going to want to hear it too. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Have a good one, eh?
Oi, you're tuned in to Jai That Aussie Metal Guy, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his sick content. And remember, stay brutal, you legend.